recording has started. Whoever's snipping the recording, I'm 5 minutes early, so there's gonna be 5 minutes of me talking here, or just looking at me. I mean, in fact, I'm gonna go turn the camera off. Yo, Kyle.
Hey, Bill.
I have a feeling you might be the only one. You know, it's and then there were two thing. But if you didn't show up, I wasn't gonna do anything. So I'm glad you showed up. I
Oh,
would have
cool.
just rescheduled it.
Cool.
But well, let's just jump into it because I don't know if anyone else is joining.
Sure. And
Um,
maybe with the Bengals game going on tonight, people are skeptical.
oh, I didn't even know. Let me share screen.
Yeah.
Entire screen. All right. Okay, so now do you see all my tabs and all that?
Yeah, I see everything.
Okay. So the idea was, kind of a recap of our page here, but mostly there's a team going out this Saturday.
Yeah,
Um,
I should be there.
oh yeah, cool, perfect.
Yep.
And that's good because Stephanie's I don't think not going to be on. So, but she's should be aware that we've got all these things that we've identified, which is a
Yeah.
significant amount that needs to be fixed in the data. And this isn't necessarily a normal amount or anything, but she should have this printed out with her. But if she doesn't, it's you're aware of it too. But
Yeah.
basically, I really think that trip just needs to start out with getting B4 to C1 reshot, C1 to C2 reshot, so that we'll have to remake the line plot, right, that we have in here, which is fine. It'll just go into Compass. We'll change the Compass data. We'll export it as SVG and pop a new line plot on this bad boy. But even then, we can still like work on this even without that.
Okay, so if you start drawing things in, so when we populate a new line plot, is there like a zero coordinate that it references?
Yeah, so when we were in exporter, we were able to like let's see. So it comes with an arrow
Okay.
when you import it. So when you import it again, that arrow is still going to be pointing north, but if you moved settings, like if you changed the angle of the line plot in SVG exporter and then exported it, it would be different. So
Okay.
there is a way, but your reference point can always be this to make sure it was the same technically. And it does pop out a correct scale. But that when I was changing, I don't know if I did it, but when I was like changing the pitch and stuff, I can show you. I'll show you where it is since this is so.
Okay.
It's this area here, like Y cave rotation of paper, I think.
Okay. That'll affect the north.
That'll change your north arrow, and when you import it, it'll have that direction on there.
Okay.
Which, so when I do save these, sometimes if I am changing I never change the angle, the direction of the line plot. I will change the profile, which is a whole nother concept that we'll do later on once we have a little bit more map done.
Yeah. Okay.
But for the plan, I never change it. Reasons you would to fit it on the paper properly, but you can always import it like this always and change it all later, so you can rotate your whole cave and rotate this arrow at the same time, for example. But there's lots of things. But as far as importing, I always import a default facing north.
Cool. Perfect.
Or with north up.
And then ideally at the same scale.
Yep, and yeah, the same scale is very helpful. And so if we pull it in at a new scale, and we already were drawing, that's going to be a little funky. But yeah, as long as we import it all at the same scale, it's something that's common. I actually haven't had so many caves where we've had so many other trips I've had to like constantly import new line plots over and over again. My only solution is just to, put it right on top of the other one and then delete the other one. I'm going to talk to Howard if he's got a better way of doing that, because he's done a lot of maps where we've gone and added more survey, and I don't know if he's doing the whole process every time. I would think he is. I don't see any way around it.
But you'd effectively be adding on to the line plot data.
Yeah, we're
And
gonna.
all
So
this
we're.
beginning stuff should stay the same.
Yep. Exactly. So you
Perfect.
just kind of have to, if you already were drawing, you just kind of like match it up again, or you could cut everything else out and try to tag it on to the last station. Yeah, I don't know. We're gonna definitely experience that for this one. And you were right. You know, D1, D2, D3, D4. They put that in the notes wrong, so they sketched it right, but the actual raw data was wrong. And then it was way too hard to figure it out. Other than taking this piece of paper, like I have it here, I could go in and get all the, well, they didn't do a profile, so that's kind of confusing too. So that's part of what I'm asking. These are really easy. It's just reshooting data points, and everything was labeled in the cave, so it's not a big deal. Profile of D1 to D4, not easy. D team data needs fixed and resolved, kind of is a little bit of a confusing one too. But it has to do because they did not record the data properly, but we have all the data. So I should be able to go in and figure out what's going on there. Regardless, though, we're going to need a profile. If we just didn't do a like they were telling me why they didn't do it, and it made sense, but I don't think they were thinking about the grand scheme of the whole cave. If we're just missing a profile for this section, it kind of halts progress, because we're going to import the profile line plot all at once.
It kind of looks like they're going into like a kind of tall, like you could crawl under and then stand up in like a canyon.
Yeah, so
Is
these
that kind of
lines
what you're
were, I think, incorrect here. Unless this is the top, I don't think that wouldn't make any sense. This was
seeing? Okay.
they drew the lines as if they were standing up here as a pit, but they were really at the bottom of it when they were drawing it. So it really should be a ceiling sort of thing.
Okay.
Or yeah, that's not, this was that is a floor drop. That is a floor drop, and they're going under that floor drop. It was my understanding of it, but this was an interesting take, but that's okay because they had really good cross sections to help explain it. No, yeah, it was a floor drop, but this portion they went under is technically a ceiling drop because they were going under. But that's a whole sketching discussion. It's not a big deal or anything. What we have an issue as is the way they wrote their data to D1 to D2 to D3 to D4. We have the scan of that. I might take a look at that and try to resolve it before you guys go out. I have it right here. But that's just the concept of that. I just wanted to hit on. We kind of have these things to figure out. These are really easy, like easy checklists. This one takes a little bit more, like maybe bringing the data page with you, and I'll talk to Stephanie about this, and she says I remember she even commented on it. But taking the D teams pages with, and then getting a profile in for D1 to D4 before we go ahead, because we're just going to go past D4 and keep the cave going. We don't really want to mess around. Like we could as far as what Stephanie decides to do after everything's sort of cleaned up, we just really want to just keep getting a straight line all the way through the cave to the other entrance, and then hit up the other leads from there. So yeah. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just agreeing. Sorry.
Okay. And looking at the cartography and getting more people involved helps get more people involved in the understanding of what needs to happen and why. So it's always good to review it with people if you're ever like doing a project. It's hard. This is our file list. I guess this is how, until we got more people kind of jumping in here, this is how we can kind of share the progress. So I have it dated 11/8/23 at 9:36 p.m. Climax Cave master Illustrator file. At some point, the file is probably going to get too long, but for now, it's mostly just the scans that mess with it and make it so much at first. But when we make an update, we'll just upload it here. And I did a chat group in my idea of this, if I actively working chat. Let's see what happens here. Working on map now. So like if you go to attack this file, you know, post a little message in the actively working chat group so that me and you aren't working on it at the same time. Because that's where the issue would be. As long as one of us isn't working at it at the same time, and then we're just doing it on our own and then uploading the updated file, it should be able to be like a shared project.
Cool, makes sense. I got that notification. I have all these chat groups from this group, and I was like, I don't know if I'm seeing anything in there or I've joined them, but I saw that notification.
Okay, yeah, I've never used them. I only made this one, so I don't know why this one has a chat. Climate, I must automatically make them, but this actively working chat group was sort of the easy concept if we were going to sort of try to have multiple people working on this. So yeah, this is a little bit experimental, but there's no cloud shared version of Illustrator yet. But it might be there one day. So Howard's PowerPoints, this was the one from last time at slide 30. So he goes into matching the scans to the line plot, which you already experienced. How was that process?
It made sense, and I was really surprised how accurate the scans were. So when you scan those, are you scaling them too?
No, when you scan them on a scanner, that's the scale. As long as you,
Okay.
so you do them as a PNG or an image file, not a PDF when you scan them. That's important for some reason. I don't know if it's important for scale or because Adobe likes the PNG files more, which would be almost ironic. But yeah, when they should match up perfectly. So A1 to A2 in this case was sketched just about exactly right. Because the red line's correct based on the data that they wrote down and copied. So, you know, in the old days, this would have been perfect if you just copied this on a giant piece of Mylar, this first station. It was all done right. Scale-wise, it looks like, well, not scale-wise, but for their line plot. But over time, if you keep making those mistakes, everything shifts significantly. And when the cave gets longer, you know, you're getting some crazy shifts. So yeah, should line up. When you scan it in, you just use any scanner, like an actual printer scanner, and then you scan it as a PNG or an image file. I don't know why though. I always click that, and Howard always said to click it. Were you able to rotate these easily when you needed to?
Yeah. So I think I found you pick a point and then it rotates around that point is the easiest. So you get like the A1 point and then you pivot there.
Yep, and you'll get used to the shortcuts if you're not used to them. I click R, pick the point, and then so the R button does that. And I didn't know that because if you hover over it, it says rotate tool R on that left there. V, the V button will bring me back to a cursor. H will put me on a hand so I can move this. I click V again to move it over back to where it was, for the most part. And then the transparency of it is back in the layer. I'm going from the old stroke. Oh, no.
Yeah, so that got me because I would change the transparency, but then I couldn't adjust it after I made a change.
Oh,
so
there it is.
I don't know what was going on there.
So if you click it, I'm in the swatches, brushes, and symbols thing, which should automatically pop up each time. But if it's not there, it's somewhere in the window. So the window's turning all this on, like stroke. Yep, it's stroke.
Okay.
Window stroke. It's down here. It says transparency. So it's at 50%. I can make it 25% and click enter. I can make it back to 100% and click enter. So when you click it, you should be able to then find this box, which if it's missing is hidden in window, and you got to turn on swatches.
So you're clicking on the single scan, or are you clicking on like the scans layer?
So if I just click on the scan, like the layer will automatically populate. So
Yeah.
like if I click the line plot, if you watch the left right there, it already switched me to the layer, and it found me where in that layer I was clicking to some degree. But if I click away, I'm still over there. But if I click this, now I'm highlighted on scans. But you click the scan that you want to do, and then you find where you're doing your stroke size, and there's another tab that says transparency, and you can do it to 50 or 25, and you'll see why the transparency is helpful. And then, you start stacking these, and you're like, so I only work on one at a time when I do it, this SVG exporter way. So I'll hide and you can change all the scans at once. You can click the scans layer, but you got to click this little circle here, and it'll highlight all of them, and I can make them all 100%. Again, I should be able to, but it didn't really work. Maybe it did, and I just didn't notice because I don't know. It's supposed to. 50, 25. So I'm going to hide, though. I know when I click on this scan that it's this one because it's got the circle around it right there. So I'm going to hide all of them except that one to make this a little easier for us. And the whole idea here is that the goal, I guess the next step we need to get at is we need to put all these walls in. And if we want, we can put the additional details in at this time. But I think the first step is just the walls. And when I save this again, you're going to have brushes and symbols to work with. And what we're not going to waste our time with right now is how to make brushes and symbols. Basically, anything you draw, this is just lines. Anything you draw can be made into a symbol. So I just made 5 lines. I'm just going to grab them all and take them to, oh, I don't want them to be a brush though. I'm going to take them to the symbols tab, which is oddly cut off with this color thing, swatches, brushes, symbols. If I just drag it in there, I've now got a symbol here, and I can just drag more of those anywhere I want. So symbols are that easy. You can make anything into a symbol. You can take your symbol, and you can see it kind of blocks them off. You can break the link to the symbol by right-clicking. You can ungroup it, and it's kind of back to its original 5 pieces again. Oops. But just be aware symbols exist, and if you think about it, if we make a symbol for slope, which I thought there'd be one. Oh, there it is. If we made a symbol for slope, we just click and drag right onto the map where they're supposed to go. So we technically have all our slope symbols in, but some mistakes I made, their sizing might not be right yet because I'm just taking them out of a library that Howard made, and I'll put all these in this shared file so we don't have to make any symbols, and we can just kind of use what's already made. Because making them is kind of tedious. You need to get all your little lines the right angles and the right lengths. An issue I made is I put all these symbols in the scans layer, which is going to complicate things. So instead of that, I would make a new layer called slope. These are our slope lines. And I would start placing these symbols in the slope lines layer. Or I could have a different layer that slopes in a layer with other floor changes. but we don't really want to start there. We want to just start with the walls. So we make a new layer called walls by clicking this little arrow, and you can click a new layer and name it. But we made walls last time, I think. And to start drawing in it, you just make sure you're on it. You can click away from anywhere too, so you can just click into the void out here. Click walls. You're going to want the pencil tool. And then you're just going to want to adjust your stroke to be 1 or 1.5. We're going to do 1.5 because having the walls pop looks good. And starting at 1.5 gives us some more different sizes we can work with in the long run. And we can always change this later. So we can select the entire layer of walls and change them all by the click of a button. But quite literally, when you go put walls in, you zoom in, which I'm using Control Plus and Control Minus in this older program. You zoom in, usually about 300% should be sufficient. But when you're working with a mouse and keyboard instead of like a drawing pad, you'll find your groove. But if you work too close, like 1600%, you're spending a lot longer drawing in walls. Although they're more accurate, to draw all this takes a really long time versus being zoomed out and having one stroke be that. So consider that when you think about how close you are to the scans. And usually it's about 300%. You don't want to go a lot closer than that, depending on how specific you're trying to get. So back highlight on the walls. I'm using the pencil tool, which is the N on the keyboard. I've got my weight to 1.5. I can double click the walls thing and change the color of the layer when I'm drawing, and usually a nice light color, bright neon color is helpful. And I've got A1 and A2 lined up pretty well. And then you're just going to trace in the walls. And I'm just using my mouse right now. Usually I'll use a little drawing pad. And you can change, the sensitivity on that. When you let go, it's going to give you the ability to pick up where you left off. If you see it's got a little X around, I don't know how small it is, but it's got a little X on the pencil. And when I hover it closer, the X goes away. That means it's going to pick up and continue that line. Control Z is your best friend. Control Z will undo if you make a mistake. So if I accidentally start drawing here, I didn't really want that. So I'm going to click Control Z and continue putting in my walls. We have a lead here. So I'm going to break it off at that point and then continue it here. Oh, you know what? I bet that's probably this going up before I go too far there. But I'm going to want my walls on this side too. Kind of roughly done, but just need to get something in. And you got to think, it's up to you how exact you want to be on those lines. When you start doing it more, you see how zoomed out these things end up being and how these minute details didn't really matter. But you get the walls in. You could then continue to do walls for the next scans. So you could turn on all the scans again, turn off the one we were working on, find out which scan this is by clicking on it. It highlights it with the circle. I know it's that one. And I can just start working on this one now, lining it up. And you'll see how, now we got to kind of tackle this wall doing this, which is kind of odd. Or the wall doing this. But once you're lined up there, what I do is in some situations, I'll fix this but this one's A2 to AA. A2 to A3 had the wall there, so I'm just going to leave it. This one, I'm just going to pick it up where they intersect and keep the walls going. And again, this will be fixed probably when we put in AC to AD. And then you start, getting the beginnings of a cave map. We're getting our walls in. One of the objectives too is to actually sketch in the entrance, which we didn't mess up with on the first day there. So Stephanie is planning on getting the entrance sketch too, so we have a proper entrance to the cave. But from here, symbols can handle the mud. Symbols could handle the stalactites. Here they are, stalagmites. Right here, I'm going to pull them into our library. These ones are showing that they're on the ground, and you could see they start out kind of small. There's ways that we can tackle that by making them larger. They're also actually kind of weird. They've got a white outline on them, which is fine. It's just weird. It's odd.
So are those symbols, is that like a library you have saved locally?
Yeah, so I didn't make this is the ones Howard had in our class that I did in like 2012. And I haven't actually not used them before, but I've made my own symbols every time I've done a map, but it takes a while. And the only reason I like doing it is because I kind of get the scale right. In this case, we're going to be maybe placing these symbols. Again, I'm placing them in the walls, which so I'm going to get rid of all these. We could keep them this size, but we're at 300% right now. So at 100%, you might want to be able to see them. So they're going to have to be a little bit bigger. And in that case, we could select them all. I'm holding shift and clicking click. So kind of you'll start figuring all this stuff, like learning these quick little tricks. And see, that's not a good way of doing it. Never mind. You can highlight them all. You can right click, transform, scale. And we can uniformly at one time change them all 125%. So 25% increase in size at once. And that really wasn't enough. So I'm going to click Control Z, right click, transform, scale 150%. That we might really want 200% on them. But I just want to make sure you can see the idea of you can create these symbols and just drag them in. You don't have to draw them every time. You don't have to sit there and draw a triangle by hand every time. We could just drag them all in. We could do that for mud, or we could use a swatch for mud. And in this case, let's do brush first. We have our ceiling changes, so we could make a symbol for T, and we could plug in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We could plug in 10 symbols, or we could use a brush. And one of these is going to be the right one. So for brushes, again, it's still part of this stroke gradient transparency bar. And I'll load all these symbols in. I'm just loading them in one at a time right now. To use a brush, you click on it. And then you go over to your tools, and the paintbrush is right here. The other way to click it is just by clicking the letter B. So there's the letter N for pencil. So if I want to do a pencil drawing, I can do a pencil drawing. But if I just click B, I can do a brush. Make sure I'm highlighted on the brush. This won't be walls layer, so let's just do another layer right now. Ceiling changes spelled incorrectly. Ceiling changes. I want it to be a brush. I have a ceiling change here. And you just trace your ceiling change. Oh, it looks like that's not the ceiling and it's the floor. Oh, cliff, that makes sense. The ceiling drop, the ledge. Oh, let's do that. So you see these scales are pretty whack right now, but that's just the reason I've made my own symbols. So we might have to play with that before we do all. Let's see what does this one do. Yeah. There's ways that we can reduce the size of them. So we could scale this down and then re-upload it as a brush, but I might mess with that stuff. But what I want you to know here is just you can make brushes for your ceiling changes. A brush is just a symbol that has like a spacing applied to it. So to make a brush, you can take a symbol that already exists, like our stalagmite, which is really small, but we'll still use that size. You can drag it into the brushes, and you can do a scatter brush, an art brush, or a pattern brush. The pattern brush repeats the pattern multiple times. And then I can make the spacing 50%. Click OK. And now I have a stalagmite brush. So everything starts as a symbol. You can turn symbols into brushes to help speed up your ceiling drops and your floor drops. That just helps. All it does is helps you trace it really fast. You wouldn't want to use a brush for a slope because that wouldn't work very well. But there's also swatches. A swatch also originates from a symbol. And if we made a swatch for mud, which they kind of used mud as a symbol. So that's you could use mud as a symbol. Let's see, here's mud. And we could drop in mud throughout the cave. Again, we would want to play with the scaling. It's not as easy as just clicking it, putting it in ceilings changes. We're not worried about the layers right now. The problem with just scaling it like that is that's not a 1.5 or a 1 point. Like that's the 1.5 wall. This is like some engineered thing that monstrosity we created by taking that and then trying to make it bigger. Now you want to be careful too when you go to stretch things out that you don't just grab it with your mouse, because it can stretch it any sort of direction. What you have to do whenever you want to stretch something, scan or anything, hold shift and then click, which can be a huge issue with scans. If you don't hold shift and click a scan, it's going to distort your scan like long ways and whatnot. So anytime you are going to be trying to just physically shift something by size, hold shift. But swatches, I can take a symbol out. I can take that symbol and drag it into a swatch. And a swatch is more like a layer over here in the color section. So if I take a line, that line has a black fill, or a line's not a good example. Maybe I can. Okay. That line has a black outside, or black line. That's the black line. And the fill is over here on this other tab. The fill is, I don't know what you would call this, see-through. We could make that fill a color like red. So your swatches are your fills. You can fill it to be just mud. Now, you can see the issue if you just take a symbol like that without any spacing. That doesn't really give you the mud vibe. But you could do some transparency work on the mud. But where I'm getting at is you can show a floor detail if you do this right. And you can take your black border and click it into the none thing. And now you have no outside border. So you could, have this passage be mud, using a swatch. So I've seen people do it like that before. And if you wanted to trace this to your walls, I mean, you could. I don't know if it's going to pick it up really nicely, I must say. So you could kind of do something crazy and trace it to your walls, have it on a transparency, and have your mud, and you could see it, your mud's under your ceiling change. In this case, if you moved your layers, this is where layers become important later on. But if I put scans on top of all of this in my layers, the scans actually, it's transparent, so it's not going to be a good representation, but scans in front of it all now. I put the scan back down, it's behind it all. So layers work with that function too. So just be aware, swatches, brushes, and symbols are our friends. Making them is the whole thing, but they exist. And I'm going to upload all of these into this file, and it'll just say, you know, 11:16, whatever o'clock. So we'll have them all. And then I'll probably plan on maybe resizing them and deleting some of them. I think what we start with is we just put the walls in, and then we could do some symbols that are easy. Usually I'll do all the walls at once. I'll do the ceiling drops and floor drops after I do that. I'll come and I'll do the rocks almost last, which is a whole nother day, how to trace on these rocks. You can use symbols for it, so we could pull a symbol from here. Again, this is going to be and we could rotate it, and we could just use the same rocks over and over again. Or you could draw in your rocks one by one, which is actually what people do most of the time. But that's going to be a whole thing. It's not as crazy as it sounds, but it's just tracing. So questions that you have just seeing that?
It seems like a little bit, but I figure once you start putting it in there, it'll make sense.
Right, and I kind of went over it, and it is actually in the PowerPoint. So his one PowerPoint goes into the one that we left off on, goes into lining up your scans, putting a walls layer in, setting the stroke to 1.5 is what he preferred, and then starting to draw your walls, and then recommending a drawing pad. The next PowerPoint that I'm going to post.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'll need that. My mouse is awful. My mouse is awful. It's going all over the place. So
the drawing pad I ended up getting, I got like a teacher scholarship back in the day, and I got it with that. But it's really old now. I know a cartographer who's been doing it for like 20 years who just still uses his mouse. You just want to make sure you have a sensitivity change on the mouse that's easy to click.
Yeah. It's a Bluetooth mouse that's going through a brick wall too, because my desktop is on the other side. So it's a whole battle uphill. And this, you said though.
Oh,
sorry, you go ahead.
No, what's up?
So you were saying too, like for the symbols, do you start from scratch every time? But that way you've got the scale right. You don't have to go through, at least for the map that you're making.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the best to do it every time. I don't know. I haven't played, like, I just haven't played with it enough. So if I took this transform, right clicking anything and clicking transform is the safest thing to do anything. Scaling it, I could scale it to 75. Let's do 50%, so half. Like, that didn't do what I wanted it to do, if that makes sense. What I need to do is I need to like take a brush out as a symbol. So you can pull a brush, you can grab it and pull it, and it'll bring the symbol that created that brush out. We need to transform and scale that down 50%. That's more what we wanted. And then you re-upload it as a brush. Again, this is a lot at 25% spacing. And now if we do it, that's sort of more what I was going for when I wanted to transform it originally. It's still a little bold. So what I didn't do was I didn't change the stroke to maybe 0.5. Oh, see, 0.5 was a little too little. So there's a way to go through these. So doing that is much faster than taking a line, zooming in a ton with like a grid paper in the background, and like drawing in a symbol to try to get perfectly to create it into a brush. like that's pretty ugly on first go. It takes time to get it to be all correct. So I don't think making them every time yourself is the right idea. I think knowing how to maneuver a base is better. And I haven't done it that much, and it's because I didn't understand the transform and pulling things out of brushes and trying to re-upload as a brush before, but now I kind of do. So yeah, on this one, I might go in when we're done with the walls and we're going to be like, all right, let's do ceiling changes and floor. I might go in and kind of make this look a little prettier we'll make them like a 1 weight, and then make changes off of the base symbol and then re-upload it into a brush. I'll show you how when you are making them yourself. Don't know if I'm going to be able to.
Are you on camera?
Yes. That's just me and Kyle. Can you? I'm sharing a screen, so I don't know if you can see the baby. Can you see a baby?
There you go. Hello.
It's a baby. Yeah, I think starting with a base and then understanding how to re-upload it is the way to go. I thought if I had clicked perfect falls. Oh, fallen timbers. Oh, that's the wrong one. We'll see if I have a. We'll see if it pulls up all my. Nope. See, I'm also not super organized. Let's pull up 14. This was originally not, it was an older file of Illustrator, but I didn't resize any of these symbols. I made them to the scale of the map that I kind of already expected. And so, you know, the symbols kind of look like the right size. But where is a symbols library in this? So I kind of have just a lot of random things. I've got like 4 versions of a slope. I've got a lot of different versions for mud and then some rocks that I did. My brushes, I've got floor 1, ceiling 1, pattern brush 1, railroad. I know I just made all these, but it doesn't. I don't know. I don't know where I'm getting at other than I like the idea of starting at a base and understanding how to maneuver it. But how I made each one of those is I literally just drew it and then drag it over here.
Okay, that makes sense.
So if you are going to make it, that's fine. You can draw a triangle. You draw your triangle, and I'm using the line segment tool. You know, you draw your triangle, and you're going to want it to be really good. In this case, you're going to want to have a fill maybe, but once you have that, once you have your drawing, you can save it in a sense into your symbols. What is that? Oh, it's pulling the scan behind it. You can save it into your symbols and then use it whenever you want, or turn it into a brush, or turn it into a swatch. If I was going to make this into a swatch, I could put 4 of them together, highlight them all. Oh, this first one's not one symbol. And then pull it into the swatches. And now we have a crazy swatch or a fill that actually has some spacing to it. It's a stalagmite heaven. So interesting, but there's 3 things that can help with the drafting. That's all a lot of stuff we don't need right now because all we need to do is the walls. Are there any questions for how to do the walls.
The walls make sense. That looks easy.
And I think we just say that's the next thing. You know, if you're still interested in it, we can meet up the next week and then do the other things like a symbol or brush pass through. But I think, you know, it might be beneficial for us to not do the walls until this trip on Saturday. Because we can get a lot of things fixed, like the line plot can be readjusted, re-uploaded with all the changes, and we'll have some additional. We might have some additional scans to throw into, but it's also safe to do all the walls right now because everything can be edited later. You can always, well, in this case, we have a walls layer, so I can click the walls all at once. You know, I can move them around all at once. Oops. I can change the weight of them all at once, but that's the reason for layers, to move things above and below each other and be able to change everything at once. I can move my line plot wherever we want as well. But the plan is, you know, hey, we have a method to save this on the Facebook group and the files, wherever they went. As we work on it, we have a method under chat somehow is reachable called actively working chat, where we can, you know, keep each other updated. And hopefully we get, you know, another person interested in this as well to sort of help with the workload once we get, you know, going. And we have, yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't know.
It at least makes sense to me through the walls.
Okay.
I'm sure I'll figure out Illustrator. I kind of see what's going on with the swatches.
Well, I don't expect you to.
Yeah.
I really just wanted you to know that symbols, brushes, and swatches exist for the rest of it, so you don't think we have to draw every single thing.
No, that does help to know that.
Because otherwise it's pretty daunting when you're putting the walls in and looking at all this other stuff. But the walls are a quick pass through. I like to do all the walls in the cave and then do the other things. And that helps me not get it confused in the layers. But let's kind of end it at that, right? We'll plan on having the walls completed. We'll wait till Saturday's trip, I think, to get the uploaded line plot. But once the walls are done, we'll go through again and say, okay, let's do the ceiling changes and the floor changes. And then at some point, you know, you don't have to sign up for this whole thing, but at some point, you know, it could be, hey, I'm going to take care of the scans on this December trip. Okay, I'll do the you know, January trip or something. Or hey, I'll do, or if you're really liking the walls, hey, I'll do all the walls for it, Bo. You put in the symbols or the swatches and whatnot. And
okay.
So it's kind of, we'll see. I have only done this with one person before, and it's happening right now. But I think it can work out okay.
Yeah. It'll definitely be interesting. Like I said, just learning Illustrator too. So that's part of the battle.
Yeah. It's the older one's not as nice as the newer one, but it still has all the same functions. There's a couple of quirks you'll run into, but for the most part, it's, you know the selection tool, the pencil tool, the brush tool. And then you saw me using the line segment tool sometimes, but I only use that for a straight line when I'm making symbols.
Yeah.
I will upload an updated file in the shared group with all of the symbols and brushes in it.
Okay, cool.
So when you open it next time, when you go to download the updated one from the files to maybe start working, it'll have all that already in it.
Okay, cool.
like magic. And then if you add any walls, and you upload one, it'll have it all in it for me, and then I'll work on it from there. But yeah, if there's anything else you want to know.
I think that's enough for now. You know, the walls are definitely a good start. I'll get used to just getting used to the keys and stuff.
Yeah, I wouldn't try to go past the walls, but I will be uploading the third PowerPoint that talks you step by step how to make symbols. It talks step by step how to save symbol libraries. So it shows how I'm pulling up that library of symbols. It goes into making brushes as well. It goes into placing brushes and using them, and placing symbols and using them. So everything I just kind of ran through that you saw happen, there's a step-by-step guide for it that'll be posted with this video link, which Aaron, if you're listening, Aaron wants us to record everything so it doesn't go to waste. So you're welcome, Aaron.
It's helpful because I know I'm gonna miss a meeting here or there, and it's like I can go back and just catch up on it. So.
Yeah, those PowerPoints that he made are thorough. And when I first started doing the maps on my own, I just would go through the PowerPoints one by one until I was kind of done with the map.
Yeah.
And now I don't need them anymore. But I'll post that with this link, and I really appreciate you joining so we could do this. Because if you didn't join, I would just been like, all right, I'm gonna reschedule it.
Yeah.
Now we can just kind of keep the project moving, and then ideally we get another cartographer within this project. So there's 3 of us that are working on a map. I wanted at least 3, so we'll keep at it.
Cool.
Okay. Well, enjoy your night. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye. Peace out.